Volbert walks along the dust-covered road. The little particles seem to seep through all his clothing, pulling up the flaps of his coat to shield himself best he could as he came to a stop at a motel. Okay, admittedly a rundown motel, but then again it had a pool, so how run down could it be? He spotted a woman and raised his hand in greeting. "Hello there, miss. Excuse me, please." Zayla chuckled as she waltzed out of the apartment complex, her brow cocked. "What the hell are you supposed to be?" she asked bluntly, her nose wrinkled as she surveyed the different components of his outfit and body. She parted her lips slightly, inhaling to see if she could detect an aura from him. "What do you want?" she finally answered, her eyes on his. Volbert lowered his hand, but kept his composure even in the face of such bluntness, or let's call it what it was, unfriendliness. "My apologies." He nodded his head in what could be considered a curt bow. "I did not mean to interrupt your routine. It's just..." Looking around, he encompassed the area. "I'm looking for a trailer park that's supposed to be around here in the waste, and so far I'm out of luck finding it." Laela chuckled, a slow smile flicking across her lips at the little bob of his head towards her. Her eyes glittered darkly, her words a low, silky purr. "Ah, well, there's lots of trailer parks out here." She started, weaving her hand casually in the air to encompass the area. "Need a bit more info to go off than that, love. Why are you looking for it? Or, better question, whom are you looking to meet?" Volbert felt a familiar tug at the edge of his consciousness. Her demeanor, her attire. Something put him on guard, though he did not know why. "Oh well, you're right. I'm looking for a contact of mine. His name is Henry. He works as a car mechanic and I was told he lives in a trailer park." The lenses of his glasses seemed to lose their translucency, his voice unchanging. "Do you happen to know him by chance?" Zayla shook her head slowly, the smile creeping further across her lips as his glasses darkened. "Ah, Henry, yes," she said with a shrug of her shoulders. "Whoever gave you the information about his place of dwelling got it wrong," she said slowly, a cruel little smile flashing fully at him, her voice still a low, silky purr. "I can actually take you to him," she said sweetly, "if you follow me." Volbert watched her carefully now. Henry was more as likely dead, at least it's what Haley was suspecting. He thought for a moment as he felt his body shift, some of the implants came into phase. Who was this person? "Oh, that would be splendid, Miss..." I didn't quite catch your name earlier. Zayla smirked, her eyes dancing wickedly at him. "I didn't offer it. My name is Persis. I'm of Prince Ty's aides." She purred sweetly, lying straight out of her sharp little teeth. "This way, then." She trailed off, head inclined at him. "Whom do I have the pleasure of speaking with?" she asks as she begins to walk towards the dungeon brimming with monsters. Volbert nodded. "It's nice to make your acquaintance, Persis." He didn't even move a muscle at the name Prince Ty. He honestly had no idea who that is. Making a gesture with his gloved hand for her to lead the way. "My apologies for being rude. My name is Volbert," following her along the way. He was sure now she had no idea who Henry was. So, in that regard, it was a dead end. However, she might be the reason you had sent him to this town, and there was only one way to find out. Laela hummed, pleased as he started to follow her. "Absolutely a pleasure to meet you, Volbert," she'd quip, She moved quickly, her eyes flicking over him every so often, not so much to see if he was keeping up, but to watch the way he moved, looking for any weak spots or injuries, any visible weapons as his cloak moved around him. Volbert walked after her, crossing his arms behind his back. He was quite sure whatever would not happen in the open place of the wastes. She was physically fit, no doubt, but it was unlikely she would attack him directly. It just didn't seem her style. Playing with the transponder on his wrist, he pressed a few buttons before his arms came forward once more. The HUD display in his glasses flickering to life as he scanned her tattoos, magnified the images and studied them, wondering if there was anything they would reveal about the person in front of him. Zaela smirked at him, her smile still on her lips, sharp little teeth protruding from them in serrated rows. Her head tilted at the cave. Henry used to live in the trailer parks, but he got a bit miserly in his old age. He's got a grotto down there. He might not be home, but he might as well be. She purred. Also, he gets a little jumpy with weapons. You might want to leave your swords and guns at the entrance before you go down. She added, I can watch them for you. Volbert raised his eyebrow for just an instant before he had his expression under control once more. The Henry he was referring to was 28 years old, as Haley was 23 and she told him Henry was 5 years older than her. As a gifted mechanic, he would have been able to repair some of his gear if necessarily and certainly not be afraid. He managed to smile. It's professional, like a clerk in a gas station that wishes you a nice day while in effect telling you to, fuck off. Sure, I don't want to scare the old boy. Hand falling to his side to push the flap of the cloak away, to access the weapons, to take them off. She merely watched, seemingly unconcerned as his hands moved to push his cloak away. His eyebrow lifted, his overly polite smile. She must have said something wrong, but no matter. He was isolated, away from the buildings and most of the civilization. She could still make this work. His words made her smirk spread into a full-blown wicked smile, all sharp teeth and malice, a dark chuckle falling from her lips. She took a few steps back, her hand giving a dramatic flourish towards the cave entrance, free hands slipping casually to rest on the head of the snake around her neck, fingertips brushing the blood-red gems. Volbert's eyes are bathed in green light as combat information runs over his lenses. Distance approximately 3 meters. Angle of attack displayed impossible quickly as the targeter ran through tactical options. There was an audible click as the gun's safeties fell off. Chemicals were pumped into his system. Thud. The beat of his 2 hearts increased. Thud. Ammunition selector set to hollow point. Thud. Hit approximation 92%. Thud. Expected fatality rate 96%. Thud. The target cross adjusted mid-chest on the woman's center mouth. Thud. Volbert drew his gun with an expression like ice. A little laugh fell from her lips, pitched hand and slightly neurotic as the green glow surrounded his lenses. The soft click of weapons making endorphins flood into her system. Her eyes glittering with malice, the light green orb slowly bleeding into black, fingertips lovingly stroking the head of the snake, brushing the blood gems, fingertips pressing down, a single drop of her blood welling up to coat the gems, smearing it around. Her lips parted as she began to hum, the sound seemingly low and unconscious, but it slowly began to build a soft wham, wham, wham. The sound echoing around her as a pulse built slowly. Either correctly or incorrectly, she assumed he was some kind of cyborg after the green flash and the automatic click of the weapons. In her experience, almost all cyborgs wore tinted glasses that flashed. She still smiled at him, seemingly doing nothing but stroking his snake's head and humming an off-key tune. The electromagnetic pulse slowly beginning to build. She just needed a little more time before she would direct it at him. Volbert noticed static flicker over the targeter. The implants in his body began to lose a hold on this reality as they shifted in and out of phase. He felt the onset of spasms as the reinforced fibers in his muscles slowly slipped his control. The guns, rock solid planted on her body just an eye stroke previously, shivered almost imperceptible, but shivering they did. No matter, by force of will the former Raven pulled the trigger of the guns. The large guns sending a deadly payload towards her target. Beginning to close the distance with ruthless motions, round after round was fired towards her, even though without the compensation systems, accuracy would be greatly reduced. Zayla tried to jerk out of the way, but they were too close in the distance for her to avoid the shot completely. She gave a low sound of anguish as weapons fired in her direction, bright flashes, the smell of the powder in the air. She felt a searing pain across her body, her vision blurring for a moment from the pain. She didn't look down to see, she merely turned the anguished moan into a scream of pure fury and rage, tunneling the electromagnetic pulse into one huge pulse and sent it flying at him. There was a jagged, gaping hole just next to her upper ribcage, a clean shot completely through her body at this close of range. Dark wells of blood began to pool down her skin. She snarled, sharp serrated teeth on full display, the blood leaking down her body, seeming to particle off the blood gems around her neck, siphoning it. Most of it continued to drop down, but some of it misted up, coalescing around the snake's head. There was more blood than she was willing to part with, but there was little she could do about it now. He was closing fast, her eyes now completely pitch black, the veins breaking across her face in dark, throbbing spiderwebs. Her snarling mouth opened further, daring him to step into her personal space. Long, cruel claws tipped her fingers as she'd lunge to make her way past him if she were fast enough, going for the hand that held the gun, clawed hands raising deep into the skin and flesh at the pass through if she could, circling around his back before he could get off another shot. She was unamused. Volbert growled in cold fury as the woman, creature, exploded into motion. Her face the imprint of the darkness in her soul. It was unclear if the bullets had found their mark, the muscle flash briefly obscuring the scene. He felt a sharp pain on his left hand as razor-like claws cut over the back of his hand, separating the tendons. The left gun sliding out of his hand, falling impossibly slow towards the ground. Its clip halfway emptied. Ceasing fire with the right gun to conserve ammunition, turning to his right, he swung his right arm around the height of his chest, where he approximately expected the head of the smaller woman, using the steel of the handgun like a club against her. Dropping his knee slightly inwards, the armored boot covering his midriff should she attempt to kick him in a less pleasant way. Zayla's head exploded in a flash of disjointed lights and sounds as something metallic clipped across her skull. The world seemed to tilt around her, pain exploding behind her eyes. All she could smell was blood, the tangy, coppery scent filling her nostrils. The back of her head felt wet, throbbing in tandem with the pulsing veins. But not all of it was her own. She could smell him now. The heady skin ran through her body, making her muscles jump under the skin. The pain ran across her senses, sharpening them after the initial blow, helping to clear her mind. The familiar searing flashes of agony an old friend. She laughed, the sound dark, low and cruel. he crouched low, one leg lifted to protect his jewels. Blood funneled into the gems around her neck, but she didn't attack him physically. Instead, she danced backwards, sending him a wicked smile, using his blood on her claws to draw a small, intricate pattern on her midriff, mixing their blood together. A pulsing black mist beginning to twist on her skin, swirling up into a more solidified liquid form, all black ichor and a repulsive scent. She twisted her fingers, pointing them at him as a black vicious substance seemed to flutter into the air, then follow the blood misting in the air as she tugged at it from his wounds. If he could not stop it, the substance would begin to melt into his blood, entering the slashed wrist and warming itself into his system. Volbert was unfazed by her change, the wound on his hand already clotting, but it was impossible to say if it was fast enough to seal the wound. The slashed glove covering any visual confirmation she might have had. With his blow, as he had turned, briefly stunning her, he threw himself forward, barreling into her once more solid form with his bulk. This would become very close and personal. Warning icons came online in his vision as a contamination of his body was reported. Zaela had no clue if it had worked or not, but as his body slammed into her much smaller one, she didn't have much choice. She was never a good physical fighter, and it showed. She barely had enough time to form a half-decent block, her arms coming up defensively, body crouching low, head dug just behind her arms. His bulky form made her teeth rattle in her already sore skull as he closed the distance. She hummed her odd tune, the misted rune on her midriff glowing red with their combined blood. As he made contact, her teeth would attempt to sink down into his flesh, any part of his flesh she could get a hold of. The sharp serrated fangs made for ripping and tearing. The rune on her stomach continued to glow if enough of the black ichor had managed to get into his system. His blood would begin to boil, rising in increased temperatures, burning him from the inside, the blood curves mirroring her own boiling blood under her skin. Her body steamed, skin bubbling over the whirling flesh. She gave a whimper. Her body could handle the heat and curse, but it damn well still hurt. Tears leaked from her eyes, only to instantly evaporate. She had no idea what systems or modifications he worked off of, but she would try to burn them out. Volbert groaned in pain as the rune on her body increased to brighten. More and more icons came up now, body defenses at 100% as Glance injected antitoxin, painkiller and combat drugs into his body. His eyes behind the glasses flared, his pupils miniature golden suns glowing with an inner fire of their own, though very different one as hers. He would not be able to continue the fight for long, he knew. Already the first systems began to go offline, slipping out of this reality once more. His teeth grinding as the temperature went higher and higher within him, the second gun slipping from his grasp as his body burned. Still he came on, blow after blow shattered against the defenses, tearing them down, slowly, methodically, calculated. Waiting for that one moment. What would break first, her body or his will? His hits landed, heavy and hard, little gasps of pain leaving her lips as she took the beating. Her arms and curled defenses slowly crumbling down as blow after blow landed on her flesh. She was no close combat fighter, her body boiling in undulated, white-hot blood leaking now from her cuts and slashes along her skin, molten hot, the blood almost glowing white as it pooled on her skin. Her own body, made for this kind of heat, just sizzled and popped, hissing as steam rose. A coppery, acidic smell filled the air. If any part of his flesh or skin touched the blood, it would start to melt away, if it was not resistant to that kind of heat. She breezed through the onslaught, the pain helping her brain keep focused through the ordeal. Or she had of been too hazy at this point from the previous blow to her head and the loss of blood and his raining blows. She glared at him, pitch-black eyes narrowing in pure hatred, predatory and angry. Very angry. She parted her lips in a scream directed straight to his face. If she could, tunneling all her rage and fury into it, the siphoned blood coalescing around the snake's gums, pulls, turning into little shards of blood gems, all sharp blades that swelled and slammed at him in her scream. Her body was shaking at this point. She knew she couldn't keep this up, despite the added clarity from the pain. At some point her body would just give out. Volbert screamed in pain. As the audible attack hit him, glasses fracturing the sonic attack. The heavy layers of armor covering most of his body resisting the corrosive heat. The cloth areas fared less well as his body began to slowly be dissolved, eating through leather, skin and muscle. He was finished. Shards like steel smashed into him. A voice in her head as he began to fade from this plane, a golden hue briefly visible as the puppet master yanked him off the stage for now. His scream, a mixture of pain and hatred as it faded over the now empty place. Not even a weapon was left that reminded of his presence. Victory was hers. For now. A voice cuts into her head. A deep voice, coming from far away. It echoed as if spoken in a large hall, and it came with utter determination. I will come for you, Defiler, for I am iron. I am wrath. I am an angel of death. They would meet again.